Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with a special kind of horror wrap-up. I'm going to be talking about the scariest books that I read off my TBR for the month of October. I'm going to have my original TBR linked down below, as well as a vlog that I filmed during the month of October, basically showing you my reactions as they were happening for these various books. But I did want to come back here and give you my final thoughts because, as always happens with reading, my thoughts during the reading experience don't always reflect my final thoughts. So I'll give you a chance to kind of know whether or not I actually think these books are worth reading, whether or not I thought they were scary, and just in general how this project went, because it definitely didn't go as I expected. All that being said, let's get started. First, I want to talk about Trapped by Jack Kilborn. This follows a group of people, specifically a group of teenagers that are taken out to the woods to go camping. And little do they know that the place that they decided to camp is actually inhabited by cannibals. This place also has a history because it used to be a Confederate prison. And it's definitely an interesting story, a gory one. And in terms of disgusting subject matter, because you know that's going to show up with cannibalism, this one definitely fit the bill. I'll let you know, in terms of the plot, it required a lot of suspension of disbelief. It was pretty eye-rolling at times, especially the characterization. The characters were just really stereotypical and really flat, and I definitely had some problems with some of the surprises and twists along the way. But in terms of a scary story, this one actually did have its moments. The premise, or the prologue, was actually really exciting. So it starts out with this person waking up and being paralyzed and having someone over top of them and possibly like a medical situation. And because it doesn't really fit the synopsis of the book, I ended up really spending a lot of the book trying to figure out how they were going to get back to that prologue. And so often I don't like prologues, but this one actually really intrigued me. And there were definitely some scary scenes. A scene involving nails definitely had some good body horror with it. And of course, again, anytime you have cannibalism, you know it's going to be gross and gruesome. And the author definitely played into that one. So not for the faint of heart, not for everyone. And I'll be honest, again, the plot was actually pretty weak, but I kept reading because while I had complaints about it, I also found it really entertaining. So don't go in expecting a literary masterpiece, but if you just want a really fun story with some cannibal action, I sort of recommend this one. It was fun at times. Next, let's talk about Let's Go Play the Atoms by Mendal W. Johnson. This follows a group of children that are being babysat because their parents have gone off to Europe on vacation, and the children have hatched a plan that involves tying their babysitter to her bed and basically holding her hostage, and so they can do what they want for the weeks that their parents are away. The premise of this book was incredibly fun, and I was really excited for this one. I've heard a lot of things about this book going into it. I've heard that it is really, really disturbing, but I wanted to try it for myself. I tend to have a really tough stomach, and again, my whole point of my project was to find books that were really going to scare me. So I went into this one really excited, and at first I did enjoy it. At the beginning, you have the kids planning out how they're going to keep this all under wraps, how they're going to control the babysitter, because of course they need to feed her and allow her at times to walk around, and so they really need to make sure that she doesn't overpower them. And so it's a really messed up tale about some really messed up kids, and if you like that premise, you might be intrigued about this one. However, I gotta say that this one rubbed me the wrong way when it comes to victimizing women, specifically involving the suggestion or possibility of rape and other sexual violence. And I can read that on the page. I am thankfully not someone who has those personal content warnings, something that I have to stay away from. However, I was really disappointed by how the author treated the subject matter. I understand that the characters can have their own opinions, but the way this book was told, I really got the impression that it was the author who was telling us certain things about the woman's point of view, and I basically felt like this book was spreading a lot of misconceptions about rape and really putting in a lot of false ideas about what constitutes rape and sexual violence, and it just completely ruined the book for me. It completely took me out of the experience, and it just became a very frustrating read. And honestly, I cannot recommend this book. I think I gave it 1 star, and I don't know if I've ever given a book 1 star on Goodreads. Again, if you're open to it, I do encourage you to watch my vlog. You can hear me rant about this book in the moments after I read certain sections, and I got so angry. Obviously now some time has passed and I'm a little bit more calm, but I'm really disgusted and disappointed by the book. Again, I can read difficult subject matter, I can read about terrible people doing terrible things, but when the author, in my mind, is trying to spread misconceptions about the topics that he is dealing with, I have a problem with that, and I'm not going to recommend a book that goes so strongly against my personal beliefs. Now let's switch over to another book about cannibals, and I also read Off Season by Jack Ketchum. This follows a group of young people from New York that decide to go on vacation. Little do they know that the woods that they are going to be staying at are possibly occupied by cannibals. I feel like all of these cannibal books have the exact same premise, and while I have definitely enjoyed some, I am realizing that it's typically not a subgenre that I'm very interested in. Just in general, hillbilly or whatever you want to call them, kind of backwater characters are just not something that I connect with. It's not something I'm interested in. I don't find them very entertaining, and they just always come across as stereotypical. I think I would have enjoyed this book more if I'd read it before Trapped, because I was a little bit fatigued on the whole cannibal angle, and I was like, yeah, you know, I've heard this before, someone's eating some human flesh, and I just became a little bit desensitized. In terms of disturbing subject matter, this book absolutely has it. I'll say that it was very grisly, dark, disturbing, all the things that you are possibly looking for if you're looking to pick up a really dark book. But for me, it just didn't hold my attention, and if I'm not immersed in a book, then I don't find it personally scary. I also was kind of bugged by the over-sexualization of women, and I am kind of finding that when you look for books that kind of have that really scary label, I'm finding that there is a lot of crossover with kind of violence towards women, which is how horror gets such a bad rep. So maybe I'm just more sensitive to that these days, but I wasn't overly impressed by Off Season. I gave it a couple stars and wouldn't personally recommend it unless it's the kind of book that is really up your alley. Again, if you just cannot get enough of cannibal books, if you love that premise, then go try it for yourself. But it definitely wasn't my reading taste, and I found it honestly pretty forgettable, which is sad to say about a book about people eating people. I also read The Omen by David Seltzer, which is about a couple that are struggling with infertility. Eventually they do become pregnant, however, they lose their child during labor. The woman is unaware of this because she ended up passing out. So the man gets an opportunity to take in another child and basically pretends that that baby was actually their genetic child, the child that his wife was carrying. We as the reader know that this child is possibly the Antichrist, and that's the basic setup for the story. I will say that this book did not fit my expectations. So going into this, I assumed that this was going to be a book about a very creepy child. And in a way it is towards the end, but most of the book is spent suggesting or misdirecting the reader to suggest that everything else is the cause of the creepiness. So the house, the governess, etc. And that would be fine, except for the fact that this book is very explicit. It's on the page that we know that the child is supposed to be the creepy one. So there's no surprise, there's no twist. It would be different if this came out of nowhere partway through the book and it was like, oh my gosh, but instead, I just found myself waiting for the creepiness to come in. And if anything, I actually found the boy to be very relatable. At times he reminded me of my own son, and I don't find my son creepy. So it just did not work the way I expected it to. Now, despite not actually loving this book, I'm still very interested in watching the movies. I know I should watch the original first. I'm also very interested in watching the remake, which I know people have told me not to, but I really like Julia Stiles. And it's just the fact that while I didn't feel like this worked on the page, I could picture how well this would work on film. And I understand that David Seltzer was actually the one that wrote the screenplay, and from my understanding, the book and the movie basically came together, and so that's actually why I think this book is almost more of a novelization of a movie, and I just don't find that those work as well. I find that if a book is based off of a movie instead of the other way around, I'd rather just watch the movie. And that's kind of the case here. So not what I wanted, not the creepy boy experience that I was looking for. So again, kind of disappointed by this one because I definitely went into it thinking it was going to be a new favorite. And I feel like I'm being a little negative in this video, so I better end on a positive note. And I'm going to talk about my reread, which I don't always do. But within this project, I did decide to do a reread of The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. This, of course, is the story of the actress Chris, who is worried that her daughter has become possessed after playing with a Ouija board, and she seeks help first from medical professionals and then from the church, asking them to exorcise and save her daughter. And I really love this book. I liked it the first time I read it, but I appreciate it so much more the second time around. Highly recommend the audiobook experience because the author does such a fantastic job with the voices. His voice is somehow both gritty and soft at the same time, and I just love the way he told the story. The scenes were so much creepier in the audiobook version because his voice was just gravelly, and the way that he did Reagan's voice, I know not everyone likes it, it's kind of over the top, but for me it worked so well. As much as possible, I tried to read the scenes involving Reagan when she was in that possessed form. I tried to read them at night in the dark, and I definitely found myself getting anxious and nervous and my hair standing on end. So in terms of a scary book, I would definitely call this one that. I really think that, especially for those of you like myself that have that religious or Catholic background, this book really speaks to me on a different level. But regardless of that, it's just, again, about a really creepy child, a really disturbing situation. I think it's very relatable to anyone who's a parent, even though I don't exactly worry about this as a parent, but oh my goodness, I could definitely put myself in Chris's shoes. The desperation she had and the scenes of the actual exorcism were so amazing. If you've watched the movie, it honestly is very similar to the book, but I do think it's great to go back to the source material because, yeah, if you want a disturbing, scary book, from my experience going through the month of October, this is my answer. This is the scariest book that I read in October, and I definitely recommend it, especially if you're lucky enough to have never read it before or experienced the movie. Go in and just enjoy a really good creepy time. So that is it for this video. Let me know down below your thoughts on the books that I discussed here, and let me know what was the scariest book that you read in the month of October. I would love for you to check out my vlog if you haven't already, because I had a lot of fun just giving my reactions in real time, because again, I'm going to be talking about the books in that video differently than I talked about them here. Now, I hope that this was a fun project to watch me do, because I definitely like to do something like this in the future. If you have any ideas for future kind of vlogs or monthly themes that I could incorporate into my channel, I would love to hear it. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do read a lot of horror as well as thrillers, fantasy, and science fiction. And otherwise, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, hit the notification bell, and share it around online. Otherwise, I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.